Imagine you're faced with two job offers. One promises double your current salary at a fast-growing startup, while the other offers a modest raise at an established corporation with unmatched stability. Most people would leap at the money, but the truly critical thinker pauses, digs deeper, and discovers the startup is burning through cash at an alarming rate. 3 months later, while others face layoffs, you're thriving in your new role with bulletproof job security. This isn't luck. It's the power of critical thinking, and it's exactly what separates the exceptional decision-makers from those who merely react to circumstances. Welcome to Critical Thinking for High IQ. Transform your mindset to master decision-making. Over the next few hours, you'll discover how to harness your intellectual capabilities to make decisions that don't just solve today's problems, but anticipate tomorrow's challenges. You'll learn the 7 pillars of advanced critical thinking, master the art of cognitive bias recognition, and develop a decision-making framework that turns complexity into clarity. Whether you're navigating career choices, investment opportunities, or life-altering decisions, these insights will transform how you approach every choice you make. Before we dive deeper, if you're finding value in this audiobook and want more insightful content like this, be sure to follow and subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Now let's continue. The truth about critical thinking is that it's not just about being smart, it's about being systematically smarter. Having a high IQ gives you the potential for exceptional thinking, but without the right framework, that potential often goes unrealized. Consider the phenomenon of the educated fool, highly intelligent individuals who make remarkably poor decisions. History is littered with brilliant minds who, despite their intellectual prowess, found themselves on the wrong side of critical choices. The difference between intellectual potential and actual decision-making excellence lies in your approach to thinking itself. Let's begin by exploring a fundamental truth that most people miss. Your brain is not wired for optimal decision-making. Evolution has equipped us with cognitive shortcuts, mental heuristics, that helped our ancestors survive immediate threats, but often lead us astray in today's complex world. The availability heuristic, for instance, makes us overestimate the likelihood of events we can easily recall. After seeing news coverage of a plane crash, even the most intelligent among us might suddenly fear flying, despite statistics showing it's the safest form of travel. Critical thinking isn't about eliminating these cognitive biases. It's about recognizing them, understanding their influence, and developing strategies to compensate. The first pillar of advanced critical thinking is metacognition, thinking about your thinking. This isn't mere navel-gazing. It's a powerful tool that allows you to step outside your thought processes and examine them objectively. When you're making a decision, pause and ask yourself, what assumptions am I making? What biases might be influencing my judgment? What information am I missing? This simple habit of self-reflection can prevent countless errors in judgment. Metacognition operates on multiple levels. At the basic level, it involves awareness of your current mental state. Are you tired, stressed, or emotionally charged? These factors significantly impact decision quality. At a deeper level, metacognition involves understanding your cognitive patterns, biases, and blind spots. Do you tend toward optimism or pessimism? Are you risk-averse or risk-seeking? Do you prefer quick decisions or thorough analysis? Let's explore specific metacognitive techniques that high-performing individuals use daily. The first is the thinking aloud protocol, where you verbalize your thought process as you work through a problem. This externalization often reveals gaps in logic or hidden assumptions that remain invisible in purely mental processing. Try this exercise. Next time you face a complex decision, speak your thoughts out loud or write them down in real time. You'll be surprised how often this simple act clarifies your thinking. Another powerful metacognitive tool is the belief audit. Regularly examine your core beliefs and assumptions about yourself, others, and the world. Ask yourself, what evidence supports this belief? When did I form this belief, and is it still valid? What would change if this belief were false? This practice prevents outdated mental models from constraining your thinking. The cognitive switchboard technique involves deliberately shifting between different thinking modes. Sometimes you need analytical thinking. Other times, creative or intuitive approaches work better. Develop the ability to recognize which mode you're in and consciously switch when needed. For instance, if you're stuck in analysis paralysis, deliberately shift to intuitive mode by asking, "What does my gut tell me?" Conversely, if you're making emotional decisions, switch to analytical mode by listing pros and cons objectively. Consider the case of Sarah, a senior software engineer with an IQ in the top 1%. When her company faced a critical technical decision, whether to rebuild their entire infrastructure or patch the existing system, most of her colleagues immediately favored the exciting rebuild option. Sarah, however, applied metacognitive techniques. She recognized her own bias toward new technology, questioned her assumptions about the existing system's limitations, and sought contradictory evidence. Her analysis revealed that strategic patches would save millions while achieving 90% of the desired improvements. 6 months later, her company was thriving while competitors struggled with costly rebuild projects. But Sarah's success went beyond this single decision. She developed a personal metacognitive framework that she applied consistently. Before any major technical decision, she would review one. Identify her initial emotional reaction and set it aside temporarily. 2. List all assumptions she was making about the problem. 3. Actively seek information that contradicted her preferred solution. Consider the decision from multiple stakeholder perspectives. Evaluate her confidence level and adjust for overconfidence bias. 6. Document her reasoning for future reference and learning. This systematic approach transformed her from a talented engineer into a trusted technical leader. Her colleagues began adopting similar practices, creating a culture of thoughtful decision-making throughout the organization. The second pillar involves mastering the art of probabilistic thinking. High IQ individuals often fall into the trap of binary thinking, seeing situations as either black or white, success or failure, right or wrong. But reality exists in shades of gray, and the best decision-makers understand this intuitively. They think in terms of probabilities, not certainties. Probabilistic thinking requires a fundamental shift in how you view the world. Instead of asking, "Will this happen?" ask, "What's the probability distribution of possible outcomes?" This shift transforms you from a predictor to a scenario planner, better equipped to handle uncertainty. Let's dive deeper into practical applications of probabilistic thinking. Consider the concept of expected value, the probability-weighted average of all possible outcomes. When evaluating any decision, calculate not just the best and worst cases, but the full spectrum of possibilities and their likelihoods. For example, if you're considering a job change, don't just compare salaries. Estimate the probability of various outcomes: promotion opportunities, skill development, work-life balance, and company stability. Multiply each outcome by its probability to get a more accurate picture of the decision's expected value. The Bayesian updating process is another crucial tool in probabilistic thinking. Start with prior beliefs based on existing evidence, then continuously update these beliefs as new information arrives. This approach prevents both stubborn adherence to outdated views and excessive volatility in response to every new data point. For instance, if you initially estimate a 70% chance of project success and then encounter a significant obstacle, you might update to 50%. But if you subsequently find a solution, you might update again to 60%, rather than swinging wildly between extremes. Take investment decisions, for example. The novice investor asks, "Will this stock go up?" The critical thinker asks, "What's the probability distribution of possible outcomes, and is the expected value positive given my risk tolerance?" This shift from binary to probabilistic thinking transforms decision-making from gambling to calculated risk management. Let me share a powerful framework for probabilistic thinking called the Monte Carlo method. Named after the famous casino, this approach involves mentally simulating multiple scenarios to understand the range of possible outcomes. When facing a major decision, Don't just consider the most likely outcome. Map out at least 5 different scenarios, from best case to worst case, and estimate their probabilities. This exercise often reveals risks and opportunities that linear thinking misses. Here's a practical example of the Monte Carlo method in action. Jennifer, a marketing executive, was evaluating whether to launch a new product line. Instead of simply projecting a single sales forecast, she created multiple scenarios. Best case, 10% probability. Product becomes a category leader, generating $10 million in first-year revenue. 2. Good case, 25% probability. Strong market acceptance, $5 million revenue, 3 less. Base case, 40% probability. Moderate success, $2 million revenue, 4. Poor case, 20% probability. Limited adoption, $500K revenue, 5. Worst case, 5% probability. Product failure, $0 revenue with $1 million in sunk costs. By calculating the expected value across all scenarios, Jennifer realized the opportunity was more attractive than the base case alone suggested. More importantly, she developed contingency plans for each scenario, making her proposal more robust and increasing her credibility with senior management. Another powerful probabilistic tool is the decision tree analysis. This visual method maps out sequential decisions and chance events, helping you understand how choices compound over time. Each branch represents a decision or chance event, with associated probabilities and outcomes. By working backward from final outcomes, you can identify optimal choices at each decision point. The third pillar of advanced critical thinking is systems thinking, the ability to see interconnections and feedback loops rather than isolated events. High IQ individuals excel at analyzing individual components, but sometimes miss the bigger picture. Systems thinking helps you understand how parts interact to create emergent behaviors that can't be predicted by examining components in isolation. Systems thinking requires developing several key mental models. The first is feedback loops, understanding how actions create responses that either amplify positive feedback or dampen negative feedback, the original action. For example, in organizational change, initial resistance might trigger more forceful implementation, which increases resistance further, a positive feedback loop that can derail initiatives. The second key concept is stocks and flows. Stocks are accumulations, like water in a bathtub, while flows are rates of change, like water flowing in or out. Many problems arise from focusing on flows while ignoring stocks. For instance, companies often focus on this quarter's profits, flow, while neglecting long-term customer relationships, stock. Time delays represent another crucial systems concept. Actions and consequences are often separated by significant time gaps, making cause-effect relationships difficult to perceive. A classic example is environmental policy, where the benefits of reducing emissions today might not become apparent for decades. Consider the classic example of introducing rabbits to Australia in the 19th century. From a simple perspective, it seemed harmless, just adding a familiar European animal to a new continent. But systems thinking would have revealed the cascade of consequences: no natural predators, ideal breeding conditions, and eventual ecological disaster. Today's decision-makers face similarly complex systems, from organizational dynamics to global markets, where unintended consequences can dwarf intended effects. Let's explore a modern business example that illustrates systems thinking in action. A technology company noticed declining employee satisfaction and implemented a popular solution: unlimited vacation policy. The linear thinking was simple: more vacation options equals happier employees. However, systems thinking revealed a different dynamic. 1. Unlimited vacation removed clear guidelines about acceptable time off. 2. Employees felt guilty taking vacation without defined limits. 3. Peer pressure led to competition about who took the least vacation. Actual vacation usage decreased. Burnout increased. 6. Employee satisfaction declined further. The company eventually modified the policy to include minimum vacation requirements, addressing the systemic issues rather than the surface symptoms. To develop systems thinking, practice creating causal loop diagrams. When analyzing a problem, map out not just the direct effects of your actions, but the secondary and tertiary consequences. Ask yourself, how might this decision affect other parts of the system? What feedback loops might amplify or dampen the effects? What time delays might obscure cause and effect relationships? Here's a practical exercise for developing systems thinking. Choose a persistent problem in your life or work. Map out all the variables involved and their interconnections. Identify reinforcing loops that make the problem worse and balancing loops that could improve it. Look for leverage points, places where small changes could have large effects. This exercise often reveals non-obvious solutions that address root causes rather than symptoms. The fourth pillar involves mastering the art of intellectual humility. Paradoxically, the higher your IQ, the more important it becomes to recognize the limits of your knowledge. Intellectual humility isn't about doubting your abilities. It's about maintaining a healthy skepticism toward your own conclusions and remaining open to new evidence. Intellectual humility manifests in several ways. First, it involves recognizing the difference between confidence and certainty. You can be confident in your analysis while acknowledging the possibility of error. Second, it requires actively seeking out disagreement and criticism rather than avoiding it. Third, it means updating your beliefs in response to new evidence, even when doing so is psychologically uncomfortable. Research shows that experts are particularly vulnerable to overconfidence in their domain. They become so accustomed to being right that they stop questioning their assumptions. The antidote is to actively seek out disconfirming evidence and engage with people who disagree with you. As Charlie Munger famously said, "I never allow myself to have an opinion on anything that I don't know the other side's argument better than they do." Let me share a practical technique for cultivating intellectual humility: the pre-mortem analysis. Before making a major decision, imagine it's 1 year in the future, and your decision has failed spectacularly. Now work backward to identify all the reasons why it failed. This exercise forces you to confront potential blind spots and weaknesses in your thinking that confirmation bias might otherwise hide. Here's how to conduct an effective pre-mortem. Gather key stakeholders and present the decision as if it's already been made. A2. Ask everyone to imagine complete failure and write down every possible reason. T-sign. Share reasons without judgment or defensiveness. Identify patterns and common themes in the failure scenarios. 5. Develop mitigation strategies for the most likely failure modes. Revise the original decision incorporating these insights. A real-world example. A hospital system was planning to implement a new electronic health record system. During the EC pre-mortem, staff identified potential failures: inadequate training, resistance from senior physicians, integration problems with existing systems, and data migration errors. By addressing these issues proactively, they achieved one of the smoothest implementations in the industry. The fifth pillar is developing advanced pattern recognition capabilities. Your high IQ gives you the potential to recognize complex patterns that others miss, but this ability must be deliberately cultivated. Pattern recognition in critical thinking goes beyond simple observation. It involves identifying underlying principles that connect seemingly unrelated phenomena. Pattern recognition operates at multiple levels. At the surface level, it involves noticing similarities between situations. At a deeper level, it involves recognizing abstract patterns that transcend specific contexts. The deepest level involves identifying fundamental principles that govern entire classes of phenomena. Consider how chess grandmasters think. They don't calculate every possible move. Instead, they recognize patterns from thousands of previous games. Similarly, master decision-makers develop mental models, simplified representations of how the world works, that help them quickly identify familiar patterns in new situations. To enhance your pattern recognition abilities, study decision-making across multiple domains. Read biographies of successful leaders, analyze historical case studies, and examine failures as well as successes. Look for common principles that transcend specific contexts. What patterns emerge in successful negotiations? What characteristics do failing organizations share? The more patterns you internalize, the better equipped you'll be to navigate novel situations. Here are specific exercises for developing pattern recognition. Cross-domain analysis. Study how similar problems are solved in different fields. 2. Historical parallels. Look for recurring patterns in history. Failure analysis. Study common patterns in failures across industries. Success deconstruction. Identify shared characteristics of successful ventures. Mental model collection. Build a library of frameworks from various disciplines. For example, the concept of network effects appears in technology platforms, social movements, and epidemic spread. Recognizing this pattern helps you understand phenomena as diverse as Facebook's growth, viral marketing, and disease transmission. The sixth pillar involves mastering the art of second-order thinking. While most people consider only the immediate consequences of their actions, critical thinkers ask, and then what? They trace the chain of consequences beyond the obvious first-order effects to understand the full implications of their decisions. Second-order thinking requires both imagination and analytical rigor. You must envision potential futures while systematically evaluating their likelihood and impact. This skill becomes particularly valuable in complex environments where actions trigger cascading effects across multiple systems. For example, when a city considers implementing rent control to make housing more affordable, first-order thinking focuses on the immediate benefit to current renters. Second-order thinking reveals potential negative consequences, reduced incentive for new construction, deteriorating building, maintenance, and ultimately, housing shortages that harm the very people the policy intended to help. To practice second-order thinking, use the 5 whys technique, but apply it to consequences rather than causes. For each potential outcome of your decision, ask what happens next at least 5 times. This exercise often reveals unexpected long-term effects that dramatically change the calculus of your decision. Here's a structured approach to second-order thinking. Identify the immediate intended consequences of your decision. Huck. For each consequence, ask, what happens next? Multiple times. 3. Consider how different stakeholders might respond. 4. Examine potential unintended consequences. 2. Evaluate feedback loops that might amplify or dampen effects. 6. Assess the long-term equilibrium state. A business example. A company considers offering deep discounts to gain market share. First-order thinking suggests increased sales and market penetration. Second-order thinking reveals competitors match discounts, starting a price war. Profit margins shrink across the industry. Quality suffers as companies cut costs. Customer expectations shift to always expect discounts. The entire industry becomes less profitable. Understanding these second-order effects might lead to alternative strategies like product differentiation or value-added services instead of price competition. The 7th and final pillar is developing adaptive expertise. Unlike routine expertise, which involves applying known solutions to familiar problems, adaptive expertise enables you to tackle novel challenges by flexibly applying your knowledge in new ways. This is where high IQ individuals can truly shine, using their cognitive horsepower, not just to execute established procedures, but to innovate and adapt. Adaptive expertise requires a balance between depth and breadth of knowledge. While specialization is valuable, overly narrow expertise can create cognitive rigidity. The most effective critical thinkers maintain deep expertise in their core domain while continuously exploring adjacent fields. This cross-pollination of Ideas enables creative problem-solving and breakthrough insights. Let me share a powerful technique for developing adaptive expertise, analogical reasoning. When facing a novel problem, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Look for structural similarities to problems in other domains. Some of history's greatest innovations came from applying solutions from one field to problems in another. The Wright brothers applied their bicycle expertise to aviation. Steve Jobs brought calligraphy principles to computer typography. Here's how to cultivate adaptive expertise. Master fundamentals in your core domain. Explore adjacent fields regularly. Practice transferring concepts between domains. Engage in deliberate practice with novel problems. Reflect on how you adapt knowledge to new situations. Build a diverse network of experts from different fields. For example, a software engineer might study biological systems to improve algorithm design, or a business leader might learn from military strategy to enhance organizational planning. These cross-domain insights often lead to breakthrough innovations. Now that we've explored the 7 pillars of advanced critical thinking, let's delve into the practical application of these principles. The key is to integrate them into a coherent decision-making framework that you can apply consistently across various contexts. The RAP framework, developed by Chip and Dan Heath, provides an excellent structure for applying critical thinking to decision-making. RAP stands for Widen Your Options, Reality Test Your Assumptions, Attain Distance Before Deciding, and Prepare to be Wrong. Let's explore how to enhance this framework with our 7 pillars. When widening your options, apply systems thinking to generate truly diverse alternatives. Don't just consider obvious choices. Use analogical reasoning to identify options from other domains. For instance, when facing an organizational challenge, ask yourself how nature solves similar problems. Biomimicry has led to countless innovations, from Velcro to bullet train designs. Reality testing your assumptions requires intellectual humility and metacognition. Actively seek out disconfirming evidence and engage with contrarian viewpoints. Use the pre-mortem technique to identify potential failure modes. Remember, the goal isn't to confirm what you already believe, but to stress test your assumptions against reality. Attaining distance before deciding involves managing your emotional state and cognitive biases. High IQ individuals often pride themselves on rational thinking, but emotions inevitably influence decisions. The key is not to eliminate emotions, but to recognize their influence and create psychological distance when needed. Techniques like the 10-10-10 rule, how will you feel about this decision, in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years, can provide valuable perspective. Preparing to be wrong incorporates probabilistic thinking and adaptive expertise. Develop contingency plans for different scenarios and build flexibility into your decisions. Create tripwires, predetermined signals that indicate when you need to revisit a decision. This approach acknowledges uncertainty while maintaining the agility to adapt as new information emerges. Let's examine how this framework applies to a real-world scenario. Imagine you're considering a career transition from a stable corporate job to entrepreneurship. First, widen your options beyond the binary choice of staying or leaving. Consider hybrid approaches like consulting part-time while building your business, or negotiating a sabbatical to test your idea. Next, reality test your assumptions about both paths. What evidence supports your belief that entrepreneurship will be more fulfilling? What data contradicts your assumption that your current job lacks growth potential? Conduct informational interviews with entrepreneurs and corporate leaders who've made similar transitions. To attain distance, use temporal distancing techniques. Imagine yourself 5 years in the future, looking back on this decision. What factors seem most important from that perspective? Consider using decision journals to track your thought process and emotional state, allowing for more objective analysis later. Finally, prepare to be wrong by developing multiple scenarios. What if your business idea doesn't gain traction? What if your corporate job offers unexpected opportunities? Create specific triggers for re-evaluating your decision, such as failing to acquire paying customers within 6 months or receiving a significant promotion offer. The power of critical thinking extends beyond individual decisions to shape your entire approach to life. When you consistently apply these principles, you develop what psychologists call a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. This mindset, combined with high IQ and critical thinking skills, creates a powerful formula for continuous improvement and adaptation. Consider how critical thinking transforms your approach to failure. Instead of viewing setbacks as personal deficiencies, you see them as valuable data points. Each failure becomes an opportunity to refine your mental models and decision-making processes. This perspective shift turns obstacles into stepping stones for growth. Critical thinking also enhances your ability to navigate uncertainty. In today's rapidly changing world, the ability to make sound decisions with incomplete information is invaluable. By combining probabilistic thinking with adaptive expertise, you can act decisively while remaining flexible enough to adjust course as new information emerges. Let's explore some advanced techniques for handling uncertainty. The first is scenario planning, which involves developing multiple plausible futures and identifying decisions that perform well across various scenarios. Unlike prediction, which attempts to forecast a single future, scenario planning acknowledges uncertainty while preparing for multiple possibilities. Another powerful technique is real options analysis, borrowed from financial theory. This approach values flexibility by treating decisions as options rather than irreversible commitments. For instance, instead of immediately committing to a full-scale product launch, you might start with a limited pilot that preserves the option to expand, or pivot based on market response. Critical thinking also revolutionizes how you learn from experience. Most people learn through trial and error, but critical thinkers accelerate their learning by deliberately extracting lessons from every experience. They use techniques like after-action reviews, where they systematically analyze what happened, why it happened, and what they can learn for future situations. To maximize learning from experience, develop the habit of conducting regular decision audits. Review your past decisions not just based on outcomes, which can be influenced by luck, but on the quality of your decision-making process. Did you consider relevant information? Did you identify and mitigate key risks? Were your assumptions valid? This process-focused approach to learning helps you improve your decision-making skills regardless of short-term results. As we delve deeper into the practical applications of critical thinking, let's examine how these principles apply to specific domains. In professional settings, critical thinking transforms leadership and strategic planning. Leaders who think critically don't just react to problems, they anticipate challenges and create systems that prevent issues from arising. Consider strategic planning through the lens of systems thinking. Traditional planning often focuses on linear projections and specific goals. Critical thinkers, however, recognize that organizations are complex adaptive systems. They design strategies that are robust to uncertainty, with built-in feedback loops and adaptation mechanisms. In personal finance, critical thinking helps you navigate the complex landscape of investment decisions. Instead of following hot tips or market trends, critical thinkers develop a systematic approach based on fundamental principles. They understand concepts like margin of safety, diversification, and the time value of money, applying them consistently, regardless of market sentiment. Let's explore a critical thinking approach to investment decisions. First, define your investment philosophy based on evidence and logic rather than emotion or convention. Are you seeking capital preservation, income generation, or long-term growth? What's your risk tolerance, and how does it align with your financial goals? Next, develop a systematic process for evaluating investments. This might include analyzing financial statements, assessing competitive advantages, and understanding industry dynamics. Use checklists to ensure you consider all relevant factors and avoid common pitfalls like recency bias or overconfidence. Apply probabilistic thinking by considering multiple scenarios for each investment. What's the best case, worst case, and most likely outcome? How does each scenario affect your overall portfolio? This approach helps you make decisions based on expected value rather than hope or fear. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach relationships and communication. Instead of reacting emotionally to conflicts, you analyze underlying interests and motivations. You recognize that most disagreements stem from different perspectives or priorities rather than fundamental incompatibilities. In negotiations, critical thinkers move beyond positional bargaining to interest-based problem-solving. They ask questions to understand the other party's underlying needs and constraints, looking for creative solutions that create value for all parties. This approach not only leads to better outcomes, but also strengthens long-term relationships. Consider how critical thinking enhances your ability to influence others. Instead of relying on persuasion tactics, you focus on helping others reach sound conclusions through their own reasoning. You present evidence objectively, acknowledge counterarguments, and invite others to examine their own assumptions. This approach builds trust and credibility while promoting better collective decision-making. As we continue our exploration, let's address a common challenge faced by high IQ individuals: analysis paralysis. The ability to see multiple perspectives and consider numerous variables can sometimes lead to decision-making gridlock. Critical thinking provides tools to overcome this challenge. The key is to balance thorough analysis with decisive action. Use techniques like satisficing, seeking solutions that meet your criteria rather than optimizing for the perfect choice. Set time limits for information gathering and analysis, recognizing that perfect information is rarely available and often unnecessary for good decisions. Develop heuristics for different types of decisions. For reversible low-stakes decisions, use simplified decision rules to act quickly. Reserve deep analysis for irreversible high-stakes choices. This approach preserves your cognitive resources for decisions that truly matter while maintaining momentum in daily life. Another important aspect of critical thinking is emotional intelligence. High IQ individuals sometimes underestimate the role of emotions in decision-making, both their own and others. Critical thinking involves recognizing emotional influences and integrating them appropriately into your decision process. Emotions provide valuable information about your values and priorities. Instead of suppressing emotions, learn to interpret them as data points. Fear might signal important risks that need addressing. Excitement might indicate alignment with your goals. The key is to acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them. Develop strategies for managing emotional influences on decisions. Techniques like mindfulness meditation can help you observe emotions without immediately reacting to them. Create cooling-off periods for emotionally charged decisions, allowing time for rational analysis to complement emotional responses. As we near the halfway point of our exploration, let's examine how critical thinking applies to innovation and creativity. Contrary to popular belief, critical thinking doesn't stifle creativity, it channels it productively. By combining divergent thinking, generating possibilities, with convergent thinking, evaluating options, you can innovate more effectively. Use techniques like lateral thinking to break free from conventional patterns. Ask provocative questions that challenge assumptions. What if we did the opposite? How would we solve this if we had unlimited resources? What would this look like in a completely different industry? These questions stimulate creative insights while maintaining analytical rigor. Critical thinking also helps you evaluate creative ideas objectively. Develop criteria for assessing innovations based on feasibility, impact, and alignment with goals. Use prototyping and experimentation to test ideas quickly and cheaply, gathering data to inform further development. Let's explore how critical thinking transforms problem-solving in complex environments. Traditional problem-solving often focuses on symptoms rather than root causes. Critical thinkers use techniques like the 5 whys and systems mapping to identify underlying issues and leverage points for effective intervention. Consider the difference between linear and systems approaches to problem-solving. Linear thinking might address employee turnover by increasing salaries. Systems thinking would examine the entire employee experience, identifying factors like career development, work-life balance, and organizational culture that influence retention. Critical thinking also enhances your ability to deal with wicked problems, complex challenges with no clear solution. These problems require adaptive approaches that acknowledge uncertainty and embrace experimentation. Instead of seeking perfect solutions, focus on improving the situation iteratively while remaining responsive to feedback. As we delve deeper into advanced applications, let's examine how critical thinking applies to ethical decision-making. High IQ individuals often face complex ethical dilemmas that require balancing competing values and stakeholder interests. Critical thinking provides frameworks for navigating these challenges systematically. Start by clarifying your ethical principles and values. What fundamental beliefs guide your decisions? How do you prioritize different ethical considerations like fairness, harm reduction, and autonomy? Having a clear ethical framework helps you make consistent decisions across various situations. When facing ethical dilemmas, use structured approaches like stakeholder analysis and consequence mapping. Identify all parties affected by your decision and consider both short-term and long-term impacts. Apply ethical theories like utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics to examine the issue from multiple perspectives. Critical thinking also helps you recognize and address ethical blind spots. High intelligence can sometimes lead to rationalization of questionable decisions. Develop habits of ethical reflection, regularly examining your choices for potential biases or conflicts of interest. Seek feedback from diverse perspectives to challenge your assumptions. Let's explore how critical thinking enhances strategic foresight, the ability to anticipate and prepare for future challenges and opportunities. In today's rapidly changing world, this capability is increasingly valuable for both personal and professional success. Use techniques like trend analysis and weak signal detection to identify emerging patterns. Look beyond obvious trends to spot subtle indicators of change. For instance, demographic shifts, technological convergence, and changing social values often create opportunities long before they become mainstream. Develop scenarios that explore different future possibilities. Consider wild cards, low-probability, high-impact events that could dramatically alter the landscape. While you can't predict the future, you can prepare for multiple possibilities and develop adaptive strategies that perform well across various scenarios. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach personal development. Instead of following generic advice or popular trends, you design a customized growth strategy based on your unique strengths, weaknesses, and goals. Use evidence-based approaches to skill development, measuring progress objectively and adjusting your methods based on results. Apply the principles of deliberate practice to accelerate learning. Break complex skills into components, focus on specific weaknesses, and seek immediate feedback. Use mental models from learning science to optimize your study techniques and retention strategies. As we continue, let's examine how critical thinking applies to information consumption in the digital age. High IQ individuals often struggle with information overload, consuming vast amounts of data without necessarily improving decision quality. Critical thinking helps you filter, evaluate, and synthesize information effectively. Develop a systematic approach to information gathering. Start with clear objectives. What specific questions are you trying to answer? Use multiple sources to cross-verify information and identify biases. Look for primary sources rather than relying on interpretations or summaries. Apply critical evaluation techniques to assess information quality. Consider the source's credibility, potential biases, and supporting evidence. Use fact-checking methods and logical analysis to identify misinformation or manipulation. Remember that even reputable sources can have blind spots or agendas. Critical thinking also enhances your ability to synthesize information from diverse sources. Instead of simply accumulating facts, look for patterns and connections. Use frameworks like concept mapping, to organize information and identify relationships between ideas. Let's explore how critical thinking transforms risk management. While most people either avoid risks or take them blindly, critical thinkers develop sophisticated approaches to risk assessment and mitigation. They understand that risk is inherent in any worthwhile endeavor and focus on managing it effectively. Start by distinguishing between different types of risk: financial, reputational, operational, and strategic. Use quantitative methods when possible, but recognize the limitations of purely numerical approaches. Develop qualitative frameworks for assessing risks that can't be easily quantified. Apply portfolio thinking to risk management. Instead of evaluating risks in isolation, consider how they interact within your overall portfolio of activities or investments. Look for natural hedges and diversification opportunities that reduce overall risk exposure. Critical thinking also enhances your ability to learn from mistakes and failures. Instead of dwelling on setbacks or making excuses, analyze failures systematically to extract valuable lessons. Use root cause analysis to understand what went wrong and why, focusing on systemic issues rather than blaming individuals. Develop a growth-oriented approach to failure. View mistakes as experiments that provide valuable data about what doesn't work. Create psychological safety for yourself and others to acknowledge and learn from errors. Remember that the most successful individuals and organizations often have the highest failure rates. They simply learn and adapt faster. As we approach the final third of our exploration, let's examine how critical thinking applies to long-term planning and goal setting. High IQ individuals often excel at short-term problem solving, but struggle with maintaining focus on long-term objectives. Critical thinking provides tools for bridging this gap. Start by clarifying your values and long-term vision. What truly matters to you? What legacy do you want to create? Use techniques like backcasting, starting with your desired future state and working backward to identify necessary steps and milestones. Develop systems for maintaining long-term focus while adapting to changing circumstances. Create feedback loops that regularly assess progress toward your goals and adjust strategies as needed. Use commitment devices and accountability structures to overcome present bias and maintain momentum. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach complex projects and initiatives. Instead of relying on traditional project management methods, apply systems thinking to understand dependencies and potential bottlenecks. Use agile approaches that emphasize iteration and adaptation rather than rigid planning. Let's explore how critical thinking enhances collaboration and team dynamics. High IQ individuals sometimes struggle with teamwork, preferring to work independently. However, critical thinking reveals that diverse perspectives and collective intelligence often produce superior results. Develop strategies for productive disagreement and constructive conflict. Create environments where team members feel safe, challenging ideas and assumptions. Use structured debate techniques to explore different viewpoints thoroughly before reaching consensus. Apply critical thinking to team composition and role allocation. Recognize that cognitive diversity, differences in thinking styles and problem-solving approaches, is as important as demographic diversity. Build teams with complementary strengths and perspectives. Critical thinking also improves your ability to communicate complex ideas effectively. Instead of overwhelming others with technical details, focus on key principles and insights. Use analogies and examples to make abstract concepts concrete and relatable. Develop multiple communication strategies for different audiences. Tailor your message based on the listener's background, interests, and cognitive style. Use visual aids, storytelling, and interactive elements to enhance understanding and engagement. As we near our conclusion, let's examine how critical thinking creates compound advantages over time. Like compound interest in finance, small improvements in thinking quality accumulate to produce dramatic long-term benefits. Each better decision creates opportunities for future success while avoiding costly mistakes. Develop habits that reinforce critical thinking in daily life. Practice questioning assumptions, seeking diverse perspectives and reflecting on decisions. Create routines for continuous learning and skill development. Remember that critical thinking is not just a tool, but a way of life. Critical thinking also enhances your ability to contribute meaningfully to society. By making better decisions and solving complex problems, you create value that extends beyond personal success. Use your enhanced thinking capabilities to address important challenges and make a positive impact. Consider how critical thinking can help address global challenges like climate change, inequality, and technological disruption. Apply systems thinking to understand root causes and leverage points for intervention. Use your analytical skills to evaluate proposed solutions and identify unintended consequences. As we conclude our exploration of critical thinking for high IQ individuals, remember that this journey is ongoing. The principles and techniques we've discussed are not destinations, but tools for continuous growth and improvement. The true power of critical thinking lies not in any single insight, but in the cumulative effect of consistently better decision-making. Continue developing your critical thinking skills through deliberate practice and reflection. Seek out challenging problems that stretch your capabilities. Engage with diverse perspectives that challenge your assumptions. Remember that the goal is not perfection, but continuous improvement. The world needs more critical thinkers, individuals who can navigate complexity, make sound decisions under uncertainty, and create innovative solutions to challenging problems. By developing these capabilities, you not only enhance your own life, but contribute to the collective wisdom of humanity. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of critical thinking for high IQ individuals. May these insights serve you, well as you navigate the complexities of life and decision-making. Remember, your intellectual potential is a gift. Use it wisely, think critically, and make decisions that create lasting value for yourself and others. The journey of mastering critical thinking is a lifelong endeavor, but every step forward enhances your ability to navigate life's challenges with wisdom and clarity. As you apply these principles, you'll find that better thinking leads to better decisions, and better decisions lead to a better life. The transformation begins now, with your next thought, your next choice, your next decision. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing. The power to shape your future through better thinking is in your hands. Use it well. Now let's dive deeper into advanced applications of critical thinking that can revolutionize your approach to specific life domains. We'll explore how these principles transform everything from career development to personal relationships, from health decisions to financial independence. In the realm of career advancement, critical thinking becomes your secret weapon for navigating the complexities of modern professional life. Consider how most people approach career decisions. They react to opportunities as they arise, follow conventional wisdom about good jobs, or chase whatever seems prestigious or lucrative at the moment. The critical thinker, however, approaches career development as a strategic game of chess, thinking several moves ahead. Start by applying systems thinking to your career trajectory. Map out the entire ecosystem of your industry, including emerging trends, technological disruptions, and shifting market demands. Identify not just where opportunities exist today, but where they're likely to emerge tomorrow. This foresight allows you to position yourself advantageously before others even recognize the opportunity. Use probabilistic thinking to evaluate career risks and rewards. Instead of asking whether a particular move is safe or risky, calculate the expected value of different career paths. Consider not just salary, but also learning opportunities, network expansion, and optionality, the ability to pivot to other opportunities in the future. Let me share a powerful framework for career decision-making that I call the career capital model. This approach views your career as an investment portfolio where you accumulate different forms of capital: skills capital, your abilities and expertise; social capital, your network and relationships; and reputational capital, your personal brand and track record. Every career decision should be evaluated based on how it builds these different forms of capital. For instance, taking a lower-paying position at a prestigious firm might make sense if it significantly enhances your reputational capital and expands your network. Similarly, pursuing additional education or training might be worthwhile if it develops rare and valuable skills that compound over time. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach workplace challenges. Instead of getting caught up in office, politics, or personality conflicts, analyze the underlying systems and incentives that drive behavior. What are the real power dynamics at play? What motivates different stakeholders? How can you align your goals with organizational objectives? When facing workplace conflicts, apply the principles of interest-based negotiation. Look beyond stated positions to understand underlying needs and concerns. Often, what appears to be a zero-sum conflict can be transformed into a win-win opportunity through creative problem-solving. Let's explore how critical thinking revolutionizes personal finance and wealth building. Most people approach money emotionally. They spend impulsively, invest based on fear or greed, and make financial decisions without a coherent strategy. The critical thinker, however, views personal finance as a complex system that requires careful analysis and strategic management. Start by developing a comprehensive financial philosophy based on first principles. What is money to you? A tool for security, freedom, impact, or something else? How do your financial goals align with your life values? This philosophical foundation guides all subsequent financial decisions. Apply systems thinking to understand the interconnections between different aspects of your financial life. How do your spending habits affect your saving capacity? How does your risk tolerance influence your investment strategy? How do tax considerations impact your overall wealth accumulation? Use mental models from various disciplines to enhance your financial decision-making. From economics, apply concepts like opportunity cost and marginal utility. From psychology, understand behavioral biases that affect financial choices. From mathematics, use compound interest calculations and probability theory. One powerful technique is to create a personal financial dashboard that tracks key metrics beyond just net worth. Monitor your savings rate, investment returns, debt ratios, and cash flow patterns. Use this data to identify trends, spot potential problems early, and make informed adjustments to your financial strategy. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach health and wellness decisions. In an era of conflicting health advice and miracle cures, the ability to evaluate evidence and make informed choices becomes crucial. Instead of following fads or accepting claims at face value, apply scientific thinking to your health decisions. Start by understanding the hierarchy of evidence in health research. Randomized controlled trials carry more weight than observational studies, which in turn are more reliable than anecdotal evidence. Learn to read and interpret scientific studies, recognizing the difference between correlation and causation. Apply probabilistic thinking to health risks and interventions. Instead of binary thinking about health outcomes, consider probability distributions. What's the likelihood of different outcomes? What's the expected value of various interventions? How do individual risk factors modify general recommendations? Use systems thinking to understand the complex interactions between different aspects of health. How do sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress management interact? What feedback loops exist between physical and mental health? How do environmental factors influence your well-being? Develop personalized health strategies based on your unique circumstances, genetics, and goals. Use self-experimentation and careful tracking to determine what works best for you. Remember that what's optimal for one person may not be ideal for another. Let's examine how critical thinking enhances relationships and social interactions. High IQ individuals often struggle with emotional intelligence and social dynamics, but critical thinking can bridge this gap by providing frameworks for understanding and navigating human relationships. Apply game theory to social interactions, recognizing that relationships involve complex interdependencies and strategic considerations. Understand concepts like reciprocity, reputation effects, and cooperative equilibria. This doesn't mean manipulating others, but rather understanding the dynamics that foster positive, mutually beneficial relationships. Use perspective-taking techniques to enhance empathy and communication. Before reacting to others' behavior, consider their incentives, constraints, and mental models. What assumptions are they operating under? What information do they have that you don't? This approach reduces conflict and improves collaboration. Critical thinking also helps you set and maintain healthy boundaries in relationships. Analyze patterns of interaction to identify toxic dynamics or codependent behaviors. Use clear criteria to evaluate relationship quality and make decisions about investing or divesting emotional energy. In romantic relationships, apply critical thinking to partner selection and relationship maintenance. Look beyond surface attraction to evaluate long-term compatibility based on values, goals, and communication styles. Use conflict as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat to be avoided. Let's explore how critical thinking transforms parenting and family dynamics. Instead of relying on intuition or repeating patterns from your own upbringing, approach parenting as a complex optimization problem with multiple objectives and constraints. Apply developmental psychology principles to understand age-appropriate expectations and interventions. Use evidence-based approaches to discipline, education, and emotional development. Recognize that what works for one child may not work for another, requiring adaptive strategies. Use systems thinking to understand family dynamics as interconnected relationships with feedback loops. How do parental behaviors influence child development? How do sibling relationships affect individual growth? What role do extended family and community play in the family system? Critical thinking also enhances your approach to education and lifelong learning. Instead of passive consumption of information, become an active constructor of knowledge. Use metacognitive strategies to optimize your learning process and retain information more effectively. Apply the Feynman technique to deepen understanding. Explain concepts in simple terms, identify gaps in your knowledge, and refine your understanding. Through iteration, use spaced repetition and active recall to enhance long-term retention. Create concept maps to visualize relationships between ideas. Develop a personal learning curriculum based on your goals and interests. Instead of following prescribed educational paths, design your own learning journey. Identify key skills and knowledge areas that provide maximum leverage for your objectives. Let's examine how critical thinking applies to creativity and innovation. Contrary to popular belief, analytical thinking and creativity are not opposites but complementary capabilities. The most innovative solutions often emerge from the intersection of logical analysis and creative insight. Use constraint-based thinking to enhance creativity. Instead of viewing limitations as obstacles, see them as creative catalysts. Some of history's greatest innovations emerged from working within severe constraints. Apply this principle by deliberately imposing constraints on your problem-solving process. Develop techniques for combining ideas from different domains. Use metaphorical thinking to transfer solutions from one field to another. Create idea matrices that systematically combine different concepts to generate novel possibilities. Practice bisociation, the connection of previously unrelated ideas. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach personal productivity and time management. Instead of following generic productivity hacks, develop systems tailored to your unique cognitive style, energy patterns, and goals. Apply the Pareto principle to identify high-leverage activities that produce disproportionate results. Use time tracking and analysis to understand where your time actually goes versus where you think it goes. Identify and eliminate time sinks that don't align with your priorities. Develop personalized productivity systems based on your natural rhythms and tendencies. Are you a morning person or night owl? Do you work better in focused blocks or with frequent breaks? Design your schedule and environment to support your optimal working style. Let's explore how critical thinking enhances decision-making under pressure. High-stakes situations often trigger emotional responses that can impair judgment. Develop strategies for maintaining cognitive clarity when it matters most. Use pre-commitment devices to ensure rational decision-making under stress. Create decision protocols for common high-pressure scenarios. Practice stress inoculation through simulated decision-making exercises. Develop emotional regulation techniques to maintain composure. Apply the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, to dynamic decision environments. Continuously gather information, update your mental models, make decisions, and act while remaining responsive to feedback. This iterative approach helps you adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Critical thinking also transforms how you approach technology and digital life. In an era of information overload and digital distraction, develop strategies for mindful technology use that enhances rather than detracts from your goals. Apply cost-benefit analysis to technology adoption. What are the true costs of a new tool or platform, including time, attention, and privacy? What benefits does it provide? How does it align with your values and objectives? Make intentional choices rather than following trends. Develop digital hygiene practices based on cognitive science principles. Understand how technology affects attention, memory, and decision-making. Create boundaries and systems that protect your cognitive resources while leveraging technology's benefits. Let's examine how critical thinking applies to civic engagement and social responsibility. High IQ individuals have both the capability and responsibility to contribute to societal problem-solving. Apply your analytical skills to understand complex social issues and identify effective interventions. Use systems thinking to understand social problems as interconnected challenges rather than isolated issues. Recognize feedback loops, unintended consequences, and leverage points for change. Avoid simplistic solutions to complex problems. Apply evidence-based approaches to social impact. Evaluate charitable giving and volunteer activities based on effectiveness rather than emotional appeal. Use frameworks like effective altruism to maximize the positive impact of your contributions. Critical thinking also enhances your ability to navigate cultural differences and global perspectives. In an increasingly interconnected world, the ability to understand and work across cultures becomes essential. Develop cultural intelligence by studying different worldviews, value systems, and communication styles. Recognize your own cultural biases and assumptions. Use anthropological thinking to understand behavior in cultural context rather than judging by your own standards. Apply comparative analysis to learn from different approaches to common challenges. How do various cultures handle education, healthcare, governance, or environmental protection? What can you learn from these diverse solutions? As we delve into the meta level of critical thinking, let's explore how to continuously improve your thinking processes themselves. Develop a growth mindset specifically for cognitive capabilities. Recognize that thinking skills, like any other skills, can be developed through deliberate practice. Create feedback loops for your thinking processes. Keep a decision journal to track the quality of your reasoning over time. Conduct regular reviews of past decisions to identify patterns of success and failure. Use this data to refine your mental models and decision-making frameworks. Engage in regular cognitive exercises that challenge your thinking abilities. Solve complex puzzles, engage in strategic games, debate challenging topics, or work on interdisciplinary problems. Push the boundaries of your intellectual comfort zone. Let's examine how critical thinking applies to existential questions and life philosophy. High IQ individuals often grapple with questions of meaning, purpose, and values. Apply analytical rigor to these fundamental questions while recognizing the limits of pure rationality. Develop a coherent personal philosophy through systematic exploration of different worldviews. Study philosophy, religion, and wisdom traditions, not to adopt them wholesale, but to extract useful insights and frameworks. Create your own synthesis based on reason, evidence, and personal experience. Apply critical thinking to questions of happiness and fulfillment. What does psychological research reveal about well-being? How do different life choices affect long-term satisfaction? Use both quantitative data and qualitative insights to design a life aligned with your values. As we approach the conclusion of our comprehensive exploration, let's address the integration of all these principles into a coherent approach to life. Critical thinking is not just a tool to be used occasionally, but a fundamental orientation toward reality. Develop habits and routines that reinforce critical thinking in daily life. Start each day with reflection on your goals and priorities. End each day with review of decisions and lessons learned. Create regular practices for learning, analysis, and strategic planning. Build a personal board of advisors, mentors, peers, and critics who challenge your thinking and provide diverse perspectives. Regularly seek feedback on your reasoning and decisions. Create accountability structures that support continuous improvement. Remember that critical thinking is both an individual and collective endeavor. Share your insights with others, contribute to collective problem solving, and help build a culture of thoughtful decision-making. The challenges facing humanity require not just individual intelligence, but collective wisdom. As we conclude this journey through critical thinking for high IQ individuals, remember that the goal is not perfection, but continuous improvement. Every decision is an opportunity to apply these principles and refine your approach. Every challenge is a chance to test and strengthen your thinking abilities. The world needs more critical thinkers, individuals who can navigate complexity with clarity, make decisions with wisdom, and contribute solutions to our most pressing challenges. By developing these capabilities, you join a tradition of thoughtful problem solvers who have advanced human knowledge and improved the human condition. Take these principles and make them your own. Adapt them to your unique circumstances and challenges. Continue learning, questioning, and growing. The journey of critical thinking is lifelong, but every step forward enhances your ability to live with purpose, make meaningful contributions, and create the future you envision. Thank you for embarking on this exploration of critical thinking. May these insights serve as a foundation for a life of thoughtful decision-making, continuous growth, and meaningful impact. The power to think critically is perhaps the greatest tool you possess. Use it wisely, and the possibilities are limitless. Now, let's delve even deeper into the mastery level of critical thinking, the advanced techniques and subtle distinctions that separate world-class decision-makers from merely competent ones. These are the principles that, when internalized and applied consistently, create exponential advantages in both personal and professional spheres. First, let's explore the concept of second-level thinking, which goes beyond the obvious implications of any situation. While first-level thinkers ask, "What happens next?" second-level thinkers ask, "What happens after what happens next?" This seemingly simple distinction creates profound differences in decision quality. Consider the stock market. First-level thinkers might think, "This company has great products, so I should buy its stock." Second-level thinkers ask, "This company has great products, everyone knows this. The stock price already reflects this optimism, so is it still undervalued?" They think about what others are thinking and how that affects the situation. In organizational settings, this translates to anticipating not just direct responses to your actions, but how those responses will trigger further reactions. When implementing a new policy, don't just consider how employees will react. Consider how their reactions will influence team dynamics, which will affect productivity, which will impact customer satisfaction, which will ultimately determine business outcomes. Let's examine the principle of inversion, popularized by Charlie Munger. Instead of asking how to achieve success, ask how to guarantee failure, then avoid those things. This approach often reveals insights that forward thinking alone misses. Want to have a successful career? List everything that would guarantee career failure, burning bridges, refusing to adapt, neglecting skill development, poor communication. Now systematically avoid these pitfalls. Apply inversion to personal relationships. Instead of asking, How do I build strong relationships? Ask, what destroys relationships? Dishonesty, lack of communication, taking others for granted, failing to show appreciation. By identifying and avoiding relationship destroyers, you naturally cultivate healthier connections. The power of inversion lies in its ability to bypass our natural optimism bias. We're often blind to potential pitfalls when focused solely on positive outcomes. Inversion forces us to confront uncomfortable truths and prepare for worst-case scenarios. Next, let's explore the concept of anti-fragility, introduced by Nassim Taleb. While resilient systems withstand shocks, anti-fragile systems actually improve from disorder and stress. Critical thinkers design their lives and decisions to be anti-fragile rather than merely robust. In career planning, this means developing skills and networks that benefit from uncertainty. Instead of specializing narrowly, develop complementary skills that create unique combinations. Build a reputation for solving novel problems rather than executing routine tasks. Create multiple income streams that hedge against industry disruptions. In investing, anti-fragility means structuring your portfolio to benefit from volatility. This might involve holding options that increase in value during market crashes or investing in businesses that thrive during economic disruptions. The goal isn't just to survive black swan events, but to profit from them. Let's examine the principle of optionality, maintaining flexibility to capitalize on positive uncertainty while limiting downside risk. High IQ individuals often overcommit to specific paths, closing off alternative opportunities. Critical thinkers preserve optionality strategically. In career decisions, this might mean taking positions that open multiple future paths rather than those offering immediate rewards but limited flexibility. In relationships, it means investing in connections that could evolve in multiple beneficial directions. In learning, it means acquiring foundational skills that apply across domains rather than narrow expertise. Consider how venture capitalists think about optionality. They know most startups will fail, but they structure investments to capture unlimited upside from the few that succeed. Apply this principle to your life decisions. Take calculated risks where failure has limited downside, but success offers exponential returns. Now let's explore the concept of ergodicity, understanding when ensemble probabilities differ from time probabilities. This distinction is crucial for making decisions with long-term consequences. Russian roulette might have favorable odds in a single instance, but played repeatedly, ruin becomes certain. Apply this to financial decisions. A strategy with a 99% success rate sounds attractive, but if the 1% failure case means total ruin, it's not ergodic. You can't survive long enough to realize the favorable odds. Critical thinkers always consider whether they can survive to play another round. In career choices, consider not just the probability of success, but the consequences of failure. Can you recover from a setback, or does failure mean permanent damage to your reputation or finances? Design your life to be ergodic. Ensure you can continue playing the game regardless of individual outcomes. Let's examine the principle of via negativa, improvement through subtraction rather than addition. In our culture obsessed with doing more, critical thinkers recognize that often the best solution is doing less of what doesn't work. In personal productivity, this means eliminating distractions and time wasters before adding new tools or techniques. In health, it often means removing harmful habits before adding supplements or treatments. In relationships, it means stopping negative behaviors before trying to add positive ones. The power of via negativa lies in its simplicity and reliability. It's often easier to identify what's not working than to predict what will work. By systematically removing obstacles and inefficiencies, you create space for natural improvement to occur. Now let's explore the concept of skin in the game, ensuring that decision-makers bear the consequences of their decisions. This principle aligns incentives and improves decision quality across domains. In professional settings, structure compensation and accountability to ensure those making decisions share in both upside and downside. In personal life, commit publicly to goals to create social pressure for follow-through. In learning, Test your understanding by teaching others or applying knowledge in real situations. Critical thinkers also recognize when others lack skin in the game. Be wary of advice from those who don't bear the consequences of being wrong. Evaluate recommendations based on the advisor's exposure to outcomes, not just their credentials or eloquence. Let's examine the principle of convexity, positioning yourself to benefit more from positive surprises than you lose from negative ones. This creates asymmetric payoffs that compound over time. In career development, this might mean taking on projects with limited downside but potentially massive upside. In investing, it involves strategies where losses are capped, but gains are unlimited. In learning, it means exploring fields where breakthroughs could transform your capabilities. The key to convexity is recognizing that the world is more random than we admit. By structuring decisions to benefit from randomness rather than suffer from it, you harness uncertainty as an ally rather than fighting it as an enemy. Now let's explore the concept of red teaming, actively seeking out opposing viewpoints and stress-testing your ideas. While most people surround themselves with agreement, critical thinkers cultivate constructive disagreement. Create a personal red team of trusted advisors who challenge your thinking. When making important decisions, assign someone to argue against your preferred option. Regularly expose yourself to viewpoints that contradict your beliefs. This practice strengthens your ideas by forcing you to address weaknesses. In organizations, institutionalize red teaming for major decisions, create safe spaces for dissent, and reward those who identify flaws in plans. Remember that the goal isn't to win arguments, but to reach better decisions through rigorous examination. Let's examine the principle of pre-mortems, imagining future failure to prevent it. Before launching any significant initiative, conduct a pre-mortem analysis. Assume the project has failed spectacularly and work backward to identify all possible causes. This technique bypasses optimism bias and status quo thinking. It gives permission to voice concerns that might otherwise remain unspoken. By addressing potential failure modes proactively, you dramatically improve success probability. Apply pre-mortems to personal decisions as well. Before making a major purchase, imagine regretting it 6 months later. What went wrong? Before entering a relationship, imagine it ending badly. What were the warning signs you ignored? This exercise isn't pessimistic, it's prudently realistic. Now, let's explore the concept of decision journals, systematically recording your decision-making process to improve over time. Document not just what you decided, but why you decided it. Include your assumptions, alternatives considered, and confidence level. Review your decision journal regularly to identify patterns in your thinking. Which types of decisions do you consistently get right or wrong? What biases appear repeatedly? How accurate are your confidence estimates? This feedback loop accelerates improvement in decision quality. The power of decision journals lies in their ability to separate decision quality from outcome quality. Good decisions can have bad outcomes due to chance and vice versa. By focusing on process rather than results, you develop robust decision-making skills that perform well across various scenarios. Let's examine the principle of circle of competence, understanding the boundaries of your expertise and staying within them for important decisions. Warren Buffett attributes much of his success to knowing what he doesn't know and avoiding decisions outside his circle of competence. Define your circle of competence honestly. Where do you have genuine expertise versus superficial knowledge? In which domains can you accurately assess risks and opportunities? Be willing to say, "I don't know," when venturing outside these boundaries. Expand your circle of competence deliberately through study and experience, but recognize that this takes time. For decisions outside your expertise, either develop the necessary competence, consult genuine experts, or structure decisions to minimize the impact of your ignorance. Now let's explore the concept of base rates, using statistical probabilities as anchors for predictions. While our minds naturally focus on specific details, critical thinkers start with base rates and adjust from there. When evaluating a new business venture, start with the base rate of success for similar ventures. When assessing health risks, begin with population-level statistics. When predicting project timelines, reference historical completion rates for comparable projects. The power of base rates lies in their ability to counteract our tendency toward overconfidence and special case thinking. Yes, your situation might be unique, but it's probably not as unique as you think. Starting with base rates provides a reality check on overly optimistic or pessimistic assessments. Let's examine the principle of redundancy. Building backup, systems and safety margins into important decisions. While efficiency-focused thinking eliminates redundancy, critical thinkers recognize its value in managing risk. In financial planning, maintain emergency funds beyond immediate needs. In project management, build buffer time into schedules. In career development, cultivate multiple skill sets and income sources. Redundancy might seem wasteful in the short term, but proves invaluable when unexpected challenges arise. The key is strategic redundancy, identifying critical failure points and building appropriate safeguards. Not everything needs backup systems, but anything whose failure would be catastrophic deserves redundant protection. Now let's explore the concept of leverage points, identifying where small interventions create disproportionate results. In complex systems, some variables have outsized influence on outcomes. Critical thinkers seek these high-leverage opportunities. In personal productivity, identify keystone habits that trigger positive cascades. In organizations, find the few critical processes that drive overall performance. In problem-solving, look for root causes rather than symptoms. The art lies in distinguishing true leverage points from apparent ones. Apply systems thinking to identify feedback loops and amplification mechanisms. Where do virtuous or vicious cycles operate? How can you intervene to shift system dynamics? Often the highest leverage points are counterintuitive or operate with significant time delays. Let's examine the principle of optimal stopping, knowing when to cease gathering information and make a decision. While more information generally improves decisions, there's a point of diminishing returns where additional data adds little value. The secretary problem in mathematics provides insight here. When hiring from a pool of candidates, the optimal strategy is to evaluate 37% of candidates to establish a baseline, then hire the next candidate who exceeds that baseline. This principle applies broadly to decision-making under uncertainty. In practice, set clear criteria for what constitutes sufficient information. Recognize when you're procrastinating under the guise of research. Balance the cost of delay against the value of additional information. Sometimes a good decision now beats a perfect decision later. Now let's explore the concept of decision hygiene, creating conditions that support high-quality thinking. Just as sleep hygiene promotes better, rest decision hygiene promotes better choices. Manage your energy and attention strategically. Make important decisions when you're fresh, not fatigued. Create environments that minimize distractions and support focused thinking. Develop routines that put you in optimal states for different types of decisions. Recognize how factors like hunger, stress, and time pressure affect judgment. Structure your day to align demanding decisions with peak performance periods. Use checklists and frameworks to maintain consistency when conditions are suboptimal. Let's examine the principle of comparative advantage, focusing on activities where you have the greatest relative efficiency. This economic concept applies broadly to personal and professional decisions. Identify not just what you're good at, but what you're better at than others. Delegate or outsource tasks where others have comparative advantage. Structure teams and partnerships to leverage complementary strengths. This approach maximizes overall productivity and satisfaction. The key insight is that absolute advantage matters less than relative advantage. Even if you're better than others at everything, you should focus on where your advantage is greatest and collaborate on the rest. As we near the completion of our journey through critical thinking mastery, let's synthesize these advanced principles into a coherent framework for excellence in decision-making. The goal isn't to apply every principle to every decision, but to internalize these concepts so thoroughly that they become second nature. Develop what I call cognitive fluency, the ability to fluidly apply different thinking tools as situations demand. Like a master craftsman who instinctively selects the right tool for each task, cultivate the judgment to know which principle applies when. Remember that critical thinking is both science and art. The science lies in understanding principles and frameworks. The art lies in applying them creatively to novel situations. Continuous practice develops both aspects, leading to what psychologists call expert intuition, the ability to recognize patterns and make sound judgments rapidly. Create a personal system for continuous improvement in thinking quality. Regular reflection, deliberate practice, and feedback loops accelerate development. Seek out increasingly complex challenges that stretch your capabilities. Remember that mastery is a journey, not a destination. Finally, recognize that the ultimate goal of critical thinking isn't just better decisions for yourself, but contribution to collective wisdom. Share your insights, mentor others, and help build a culture of thoughtful decision-making. The challenges facing humanity require not just individual excellence, but collaborative intelligence. As we conclude, remember that these principles and techniques are tools for living a more intentional, effective, and meaningful life. They empower you to navigate complexity with confidence, make decisions with wisdom, and create value for yourself and others. The journey of mastering critical thinking never truly ends, but every step forward enhances your capacity to shape your destiny and contribute to the world. Thank you for your commitment to developing these essential capabilities. May your enhanced critical thinking skills serve as a foundation for a life of purpose, achievement, and positive impact. The future belongs to those who can think clearly, decide wisely, and act effectively. You now have the tools to be among them. Use them well, and the possibilities are truly limitless.